Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 849 for the 12th of January 2025. Richard Saunders coming to you from a sunny, well, it's sunny at the moment, rain later on, Sydney, Australia. Coming up on this week's show, have you ever wanted to have a chat with an alien? Have a word? Chew the fat? Talk about the cricket or the baseball? Well, apparently you can do that. Well, sort of. There are people out there who claim they are channeling messages from various aliens in various parts of the galaxy, or many parts of the galaxy. It's very confusing. And where do they do this amazing feat? Channeling aliens on TikTok. Coming up at the top of the show, we review some of those people and hear what they have to say, who are, well, almost certainly in touch with various galactic councils. Following that, it's Kat McLeod for Crying Out Loud, or for crying out loud, it's Kat McLeod. Can you trust what you were taught in health class? Do you think you know basic human anatomy? Kat this week is back and will have you questioning everything you thought was common knowledge. After that, we have Maynard's very spooky action. Maynard travels to the Bermuda Triangle, virtually. Well, what he does is he reviews some of the TV shows and movies over the years that deal with the Bermuda Triangle, which is very apt because, as we've been mentioning over the past few weeks, there's a big trip to the Bermuda Triangle with Brian Dunning being lined up. You can find out more about that at Skeptoid, the Skeptoid podcast. And the good news, apart from all the wonderful podcasters, skeptical podcasters on that cruise, the Skeptic Zone will be represented by star reporter Adrian Hill. Yes, Adrian will be on that trip as well. Imagine all those podcasters being lost in the Bermuda Triangle. Then to round off this week's show, a story inspired by our friend Lara Benham, we look at references to the Coogee Beach Virgin Mary. Now, this was a phenomena that happened over 20 years ago, 2003, where a fence post on Coogee Beach, or at the headland near Coogee Beach here in Sydney, at a certain time of the day, as long as it was sunny, with the angle of the sun and the shadows on a fence post from a certain distance, sort of looked like a human figure. And it caused a great deal of kerfuffle. People were flocking to see what they dubbed the Holy Post. Oh, the Holy Post. Now, talking about the sun and certain angles, it's summertime here in Australia, and the good advice is, of course, stay in the shade. Find those shady spots, put sunscreen on, wear a broad-brimmed hat, wear a shirt. Australia is known for a terribly high rate of skin cancers. In fact, I had one many years ago, which I had cut out. So I am very aware. Be sun safe here in Australia. Stay tuned at the end of the episode for more announcements from me. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and have a nice ginger beer. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Now, many times in the past on the Skeptic Zone podcast, we've talked about channeling. People who roll their eyes and take a deep breath and either pretend to channel spirits from Atlantis or something like that, or I wonder if sometimes they really think they're in touch with the other side. Channeling has not really gone away. The fad has gone away, more or less, the fad from the 80s and the 90s. And if you want to find the classic channeling hoax, of course, just Google Carlos Carlos James Randi, Australia, you'll find, and the 60 Minutes program brought him out to Australia. And of course, he fooled many believers. But channeling spirits from Atlantis is so old hat. It's so 20th century. The modern channeler prefers to channel something called the Galactic Federation. Or another Galactic Federation who doesn't know about the other Galactic Federation, or the Pleiades people who haven't learned about both Galactic Federations, or the people from the Sirius star system who probably haven't heard about the Galactic Federations, or the people from the Pleiades. Many of these channelers end up on TikTok. Many psychics, so-called psychics, also end up on TikTok. So I thought I'd play to you vital information, oh yes, from these people who channel various aliens, or alien councils, or alien civilizations. You could try it for yourself. Why not? Just pick a star or a cluster or something like that. You never hear about people channeling aliens from the Andromeda galaxy. Maybe that's a new one. Anyway, and let's see, we've come across here a channel on TikTok by Rebecca V, or it could be Rebecca 5, because I think she talks about 5D, like 3D, but 2 more Ds. And Rebecca's going to talk about how to connect with your galactic family.
Hey guys, it's Rebecca, and today we are going to talk about how to connect with your galactic families. If you don't know me, I am a galactic contactee, or an extraterrestrial contactee, galactic channeler. I am a psychic medium, and I work in the Akashic Records. So the number one question that I have been getting from you guys is, how do I connect with the galactics? How do I connect with my Pleiadian family? How do I connect with my Arcturian family? And so on and so forth. And so there isn't like a set specific way that you are meant to do this. And really, it's all about intention. So if you set the intention to connect and call forward the supportive galactic beings that are working with you or willing to work with you, they will come. They will hear you. They will know that you are calling for them. And a lot of you guys, when I tell you this, I hear you go, but no, I don't think they hear me, and I can't hear them. And so,
and I think that gives you a flavor of what Rebecca's on about. She goes on at length. By the way, the Akashic Records, according to Wiki, are believed to be a compendium of all universal events, thoughts, words, emotions, and intent ever to have occurred in the past, present, or future in terms of all entities and life forms, not just human. Okay. They are believed to be encoded in a non-physical plane of existence known as the mental plane. There is no evidence for the existence of Akashic Records, although Rebecca claims she works there. Okay, let's see what Cultco Studio has to say on the topic of contacting aliens.
Greetings, dear ones. We are privileged and honored to be asked to come forward today to introduce ourselves. We are a collective of light beings from the Sirius constellation. We come forward with this team of the 3 in specifics with Amy for guidance and for healing. We channel down light coding and healing vibrations from our star system. There are times that we call upon other light beings in these universes and galaxies to come forward to offer their help.
Now it appears Amy was indeed trying to channel other galaxies. I wonder, I guess a lot of these people really don't have a concept of scale when it comes to the cosmos. But of course, the classic comeback to that, when you talk about information traveling faster than the speed of light, well, it doesn't work like that on the spiritual plane. Now, what wonders does Psychic Vanessa Psychic Vanessa Wildegren, I think it's pronounced. I wonder what she has to impart to us.
So as disclosure is coming, we all know it, and we're getting closer to open contact and interacting with these beings, I wanted to give you guys a few tips on what would be good to know when interacting with them, because believe me guys, it's coming. So I want to talk about galactic manners, and I'm taking a lot of these tips from various contactees, including Elena Denon and Alex Collier, who I think are both really cool contactees. You should check them out. So the first one, Alex Collier said this. He was taken on board an Andromedan ship for, I think, months, like a few months, and he's been talking about this since the 90s, his experiences. A good thing to do when meeting different beings is, because they're all kind of different and everybody has their own kind of social rules, but what he suggests when you first meet them is to say, it is my preference and the custom that if you want to enter my personal space, you must ask my permission first. Just because, again, all different kinds of societies we're going to be dealing with, everyone's got different rules about personal space. He thinks it's a good idea to say that just kind of off the bat.
Well, I think her advice boils down to be mindful and demure. Now, here's somebody who pops up quite a lot with messages from the aliens. It's Emily H. Eaton.
It's January 2nd, and I have another message from the aliens. I'm going to try to get through this without crying, which was not the case when it first came in. I'm an interdimensional communicator, which means I can telepathically receive messages from angels and aliens and other interdimensional beings. To do this, I have a specific process I go through to safely and accurately communicate with the being that I want to communicate with. And by safely, I mean for the highest and greatest good of humanity and the planet. Today, I channeled with the entire Galactic Federation as one collective, which I've never done before. That means I was connected with the Leadership Council of 9, plus the 12 district representatives, plus the Advisory Council of 5. So that's the 26 aliens that are in charge of all of the guidance and governance of the cosmos. So that is who this message is from.
Now, with the collective wisdom of 26 aliens, probably from all sorts of areas in the galaxy, you would hope for a better message than "we're here to help you realize your higher vibration on this earthly plane. There's great change coming. We're here to help you," which is mostly what these messages seem to be. Not really helpful. Maybe Elizabeth April can shed more light on this.
My name is Elizabeth April, and I channel aliens. Beyond the hair and the makeup and the flashy accessories, I actually think that I'm an alien in a human body here on planet Earth with a message, with a mission to help you remember who you are. So, hi. I'm happy to be here with you, and I can't wait for you to see who you really are.
Well, there you go. The message from the aliens is we're going to help you see who you really are. Well, I got lots of people telling me who I really am from time to time. And finally, we have Spirit Tools, the channel called Spirit Tools, which is a man standing in front of a green screen with a sort of a cosmic starry background. And he asks questions of the universe, presumably, by waving his hand. And the further his hand waves across his body, that indicates a yes or a no. What wisdom does he have for us?
Give me a yes, give me a no. Do aliens exist? Yes. Are they here on this planet? Yes. Are we part alien? Yes. Thank you. Do they walk among us? Yes. Thank you. Do interdimensional beings exist? Yes. Thank you. Are they walking on the Earth? No. Do they sometimes walk the Earth? Yes. Do spaceships exist? Yes. Are we having these kind of spaceships technology? Yes. Do the Americans have it? Yes. Do the Chinese have it? No. Do the Russians have it? Yes. Are our governments in contact with extraterrestrial entities? Yes.
So there we are. Why bother sending probes into space and so on, or listening throughout the world with receivers for radio transmissions from distant planets, when we have lots of people here on Earth who can communicate with this particular Galactic Federation or this particular Board of Advisory Aliens? I wonder if they meet in committees. I wonder who takes the minutes. Or somebody else maybe who can contact people, or aliens from another dimension, indeed from another galaxy. But we are left to wonder how many of these people are serious, as in how many of these people are sincerely deluded, and how many just know a good rort when they see one. Talking to aliens on TikTok.
Hi, this is Dr. Pamela Gay from Astronomy Cast. Each week, Fraser Kane and I take our listeners on a fact-based journey through the cosmos. With our weekly podcast, we explain not just what we know, but how we know what we know about this universe that we share. Check us out at astronomycast.com and look for us in iTunes, Google Play, and wherever you download podcasts. See you online.
Crying out loud. It's Kat McLeod. Hi there, this is Kat McLeod coming to you from latitude 53.5-ish in the Northern Hemisphere. How well do you think you know yourself and the basics about the human body? Would it surprise you to learn that you've likely been taught things about the human body that are actually false? Shortly after I recorded my Mandela Effect segment, I found out a fact that I was taught in school was actually a myth. So, if I asked you, dear listener, to put your hand over your heart, where would you place your hand? If you said the left side of your chest, you are mistaken. In humans, the heart is situated between our two lungs and slightly to the left of center, behind the breastbone. It rests on the diaphragm. This makes perfect sense when you think about performing CPR, and yet so many people are taught differently. Is this a myth that grew because of an exaggeration where the slightly left of center became the left side of the chest? Or perhaps it is because one of the signs of a heart attack is pain radiating down your left arm. While I can't tell you why many of us think the heart is on the left side of our chest, at least I can correct that misperception. We were all taught about the 5 senses: sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. But in reality, we have about 30 senses, and none of them involve extrasensory perception, also known as ESP. Some of the other senses include proprioception, which is the sense of movement and position of our body, equilibrioception, which is our sense of balance, thermoception, the sense of temperature, nociception is our sense of pain, and we also have spatial awareness. Our sense of thirst helps our bodies maintain appropriate hydration levels, and people who lack that sense, a rare condition called adipsia, can become severely dehydrated or even die. People can also perceive several unrelated senses simultaneously. Those with synesthesia can see sounds as colors or associate certain sights with smells. How many human blood types are there? A, B, AB, and O, right? Then you have the Rh positive or negative factor for each. While the 8 ABO and rhesus systems are the most commonly known, there are many more blood group systems. In fact, more than 30 human blood group systems exist, which are important for transfusion, organ transplants, and even pregnancy. Golden blood is the rarest known type of blood in the world. It has no rhesus antigens at all, known as Rh null. It is dubbed golden blood because it can be donated to people with almost any Rh blood type, including those with rare types of Rh antigens. However, if people with golden blood need blood, they can only receive the same type of blood. Experts estimate that only about 50 people are known to have golden blood, which was first detected in Australian Aboriginal people. Have you heard that fingernails and hair continue to grow after death? Our bodies do a lot of creepy things after we die, but they don't keep growing fingernails or hair. In order to do that, our bodies would need to produce new cells, something that simply isn't possible after death. This morbid misconception dates back to at least 1929, when writer Eric Remarque immortalized it in his novel, All Quiet on the Western Front. In fact, this misunderstanding is due to an optical illusion. While our nails and hair don't continue to grow after we take our final breath, our skin does shrink as it becomes dehydrated. As the skin retracts, our nails and hair become more exposed, and thus they give the appearance of growth. Have you heard the old adage, feed a cold, starve a fever? That's wrong too. Not eating when you're ill may deprive you of essential nutrients and delay your recovery. Your body needs fuel to fight the infection, which is why your body's temperature has gone up in the first place, as it raises your metabolism to ward off the invaders. One study in the journal Cell found that when you're sick, your nutritional needs go up thanks to the increase in your metabolic rate. Although you might feel a loss of appetite, you should try and eat and stay hydrated in order to speed your recovery. Growing up in a cold climate, I was always told to wear a toque in the winter because you lose most of your body heat through your head. This myth may have come from misinterpreted science experiments done in the 1950s when the U.S. military conducted a study to determine how cold weather would affect soldiers. We lose heat fairly proportionately across our skin surface. Children's heads are in general much larger in proportion to the total body surface area, so children lose more heat from their head than adults would. Adults lose about 7 to 10% of their body heat through their head. So while covering your face and head is important in cold weather, it is not more important than having proper clothing. The simple act of wearing a hat won't make you remarkably warmer. But Kat, I hear you retort, you can't catch a cold from just feeling cold. Well, actually, that old wives' tale may have some merit, so you should definitely bundle up. Take it from a Canadian. Research in Japan has shown that some viruses that cause colds actually are more active and infective in colder temperatures. Two common causes of colds, rhinoviruses and coronaviruses, may thrive at colder temperatures, and influenza may spread most effectively under cold, dry conditions. Research in the U.S. has shown that our immune systems are better at fighting off viruses that cause colds at warmer temperatures. However, the biggest risk factor in catching a cold is being exposed to someone who is sick, and we tend to be inside and closer together when it's cold outside. Do you believe that we only use 10% of our brain? This myth was likely born around 1890. There was even a self-help advertisement in the 1929 World Almanac with the line, quote, "There's no limit to what the human brain can accomplish. Scientists and psychologists tell us we only use about 10% of our brain power," end quote. Motivational speakers and self-help gurus have been promoting this myth for the last century as a way to encourage people to access their untapped power or intelligence. However, if you look at a brain scan, you won't see large dormant areas of the brain. While we don't use 100% of the brain all the time, we do use it all. The idea lingers in pop culture because we want to think we haven't reached our full potential. For more than a century, fingerprints have played a major role in forensic investigations. Any true crime fan will tell you that you should never leave your fingerprints at the scene of a crime, as your fingerprints are unique to you. Or are they? This notion started with Scottish scientist and physician Henry Faulds, who in 1888 wrote an article asserting that each person has a wholly unique set of fingerprints. However, our fingerprints are not completely unique, and we have no way to conclusively prove that each of our collections of whorls, loops, and arches is unique, short of gathering the prints of every person who ever lived and comparing them all. Approximately 7% of people will sleepwalk at some point in their lifetime. There is a common belief that it's dangerous to wake a sleepwalker, which began in ancient times, when people used to think your soul left your body while you slept. Waking a sleepwalker, therefore, would doom the sleeper to a soulless existence, kind of like a redhead. Oh no, that's just me. The supposed consequences of waking a sleepwalker have since evolved. Some say you could induce a heart attack or send the sleeper into a permanent state of insanity. Sleepwalkers have been known to injure themselves or even die in their zombie-like state, so it could actually be detrimental to not try to guide them back to bed without any fear of waking them, because there's no documented evidence that waking a sleepwalker is at all dangerous. We've been conditioned to think that an in-shape body means visible six-pack abs. But in reality, being able to see the muscles may mean that you don't have enough fat. So it's not necessarily a healthy goal, especially for women. In order for your six-pack to show, your body fat levels have to be very low, and most bodybuilders will confess that they are very dehydrated before a competition. For some individuals, having too little body fat can be very harmful. When body fat drops too low, it can lead to an increased risk of osteoporosis and impact reproductive health. You heard it here first. You don't need a six-pack. For decades, we've been told to get our 10,000 steps each day. However, what most people don't know is that the number of steps began not with science, but with a marketing gimmick. In the 1960s, with Tokyo hosting the 1964 Olympics, Japanese walking clubs adopted the use of a pedometer called manpoke. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apologies to everyone if I did not. Manpoke translates roughly to 10,000 step meter. At the time, scientists knew that more movement generally led to improved health and longevity. However, there was no research to support 10,000 steps as the optimal activity goal. That didn't stop the concept from catching on, and soon people all over the world were preoccupied with step counting, with devices and activity programs often centered on hitting the arbitrary 10,000 step a day threshold. It has been suggested that this number we now all have burned into our brains may have been chosen because the Japanese character for 10,000 looks like a person running or walking. But no one knows for certain. A recent study showed getting between 6,000 and 8,000 daily steps is sufficient. Movement is good, more movement is better, but pick an attainable number that motivates you. While you're getting your steps in, don't forget to hydrate. But it's okay if you forget how many glasses of water you've consumed. The 8 glasses a day myth likely started in 1945, when the U.S. Food and Nutrition Board of the National Research Council said adults should take in about 2.5 liters of water a day, the equivalent to about 8 glasses. Although most media outlets reported that as fact and stopped there, the council actually went on to explain that most of the 2.5 liters comes from food. Our bodies are very good at regulating our fluid levels, so don't feel you have to force yourself to drink more water, especially if you're eating a lot of fruits and veggies. Despite what you've seen on TV and in the movies, urinating on a jellyfish sting will not take the pain away. It will likely make it worse. Don't bother trying to suck the venom out of a snake bite either. What you need is an anti-venom, and until you can get to a hospital, stay hydrated and let the bite swell, as that is your body's way of trying to dilute the toxin. Oh, and while I'm crushing dreams, coffee doesn't sober you up either. Only time will do that. So, sorry. If you were misled about some human anatomy, at least now you know you don't have to drink 8 glasses of water or take 10,000 steps a day unless you want to. You won't feel the pressure to have a 6-pack in order to be fit, and you can rest easy knowing that you use all of your gray matter, not merely 10%. Some say curiosity kills the cat, but I think it makes me more interesting. So until next time, signing off from Kitty Corner Studios, this is Kat McLeod.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Hello, it's Cub Reporter Maynard here, and I have prepared a superficial, wide but not deep report as Richard Saunders trips over every single lead in the studio, making as much noise as possible. Look down, now he's swearing. Man, this guy, if you knew the real Richard Saunders, you'd be surprised, people. But you can't get enough about the Bermuda Triangle, I'm told. He said, Maynard researched the Bermuda Triangle, and after minutes on some superficial sites that I did not check for second found out, I can tell you, some of the best movies about the Bermuda Triangle. Hey, you're going, well, how about Fred McMurray? Indeed. How about Fred McMurray?
How about Fred McMurray?
1975's Beyond the Bermuda Triangle. He was in that movie with Donna Mills, 1975. A great year for movies. Here's your plot. A retired businessman notices there's been a rash of ships and planes disappearing off the Florida coast, and he starts to investigate. I don't think he got too far. That's Fred McMurray's Beyond the Bermuda Triangle.
Wait a minute. So it wasn't the US Navy or the Air Force who noticed this. It was a businessman.
It was Fred McMurray. Fred McMurray noticed that. You think he should have noticed his 3 sons were missing as well. My 3 sons. That was him.
Yeah. I can't think of a line
about that. Look, and of course, actually, just if you were looking for something more contemporary when it comes to Bermuda Triangle, I would recommend not my favourite episode from the X-Files. That would be Jose Chung's From Outer Space, starring Charles Nelson Riley. That's the best episode of X-Files ever. Closely followed by the one about the sort of fish man that was in the new ones.
Do you remember the one they had about the face on Mars?
No, I don't remember that one.
Well, you know, the classic face on Mars. Yeah, they had an episode where it morphed into a real face and was affecting people on Earth, you know.
Okay. Wow. See, that's what NASA should be spending their money on.
Face on Mars?
Yeah, like they're ever going to go to the moon. They just keep putting that off. Haven't even got the space suits finished yet.
We should mention to the audience that we have an audience here live in the studio. Lara Benham.
I'm good.
Yes, yeah, she's enjoying the whole thing. She's an huge X-Files fan as well. Yeah. But the first 3 seasons. But the episode I'm talking about is just called Triangle from 1998, season 6, ep 3. We find Mulder on a vessel that has disappeared, a luxury liner, and Nazis board it, and he goes back to the year 1939. And it's shot in a bit of a Hitchcock style. A lot of the scenes appear to be shot in one shot. If they are shot in multiple shots, I've edited them quite well.
This must be a tribute to Star Trek, who often, a couple of times they reference the Nazis, right?
Well, look, Nazis are if you want to foil in anything, the Nazis, just ask Mel Brooks. The Nazis are good for anything. You can boo them, you can laugh at them. Or Tim Ferguson would also tell you that if you get Nazis and stuff, they're useful for comedy and drama. Okay, well, look, now, of course, okay, man.
Back to the Triangle.
Look, how about a more contemporary movie, even more contemporary than what I was just talking about from the X-Files about the Bermuda Triangle? Well, you could just try The Triangle, the TV movie starring Luke Perry. There you go. Luke Perry, star of The Fifth Element, although you may forget he was in The Fifth Element, but he was.
You're serious?
Yeah, Fifth Element. Luke Perry is only in it for about a minute, but it's good, very memorable, not credited.
That is a terrific movie. It's a really clever, funny movie.
Anyone else want to negotiate? Bruce Willis, fantastic.
Fantastic, yeah.
And of course, basically, the triangle's described a group of friends wind up in the Bermuda Triangle. So it sounds a bit like they went to Florida for spring break and it all went horribly wrong, starring Luke Perry.
This is foretelling the future because later this year, of course, there will be a group of friends on the Skeptoid cruise in the Bermuda Triangle.
Well, yeah, I mean, that could go horribly wrong. Look, maybe Eric Stoltz will be there, as he was, again, in a movie called The Triangle, 2005 this time. And this is a bit of a development on the other ones there. A shipping magnate hires 4 experts from various fields. Oh, he probably had a stamp collector in there as well, someone who was into water divining, all sorts of experts to investigate what happened to his ships that went missing in the Bermuda Triangle. The team discovers a threat that might unravel time itself and cause the world to end. Stars Eric Stoltz. It tends to take the drama away when you say stars Eric Stoltz at the end. And Catherine Bell and Lou Diamond Phillips.
Oh,
there's a bit of credibility for the show. There you go.
Actor, yeah.
Yep. So there's some ones I would recommend. I would not recommend In Search of the Bermuda Triangle episode. Not a good episode of In Search of. No. Watch it for the Leonard Nimoy fashion tips, but don't watch it. Watch it for you.
I'd watch anything for Leonard Nimoy.
Of course, the other triangle I looked in for you too was the Devil's Triangle or the Devil's Sea. That's the approximately located between the Japanese coast and about 100 kilometres south of Tokyo, east coast of the Philippines, level with Manila, and the west coast of Guam, of course, which is a US territory as well. But again, the evidence for this is over a very long period of time. I'm showing you where it is. Look at that. That's a part of the ocean that has a lot of storms.
That's not so much as a triangle. It's more of a...
Rhombus.
Thank you, rhombus.
It's extended rhombus, you think? No, the Devil's Rhombus doesn't really have that. And also, a lot of these ships that they say are large cargo vessels that have been lost in the well, let's call it the Devil's Rhombus or the Dragon's Rhombus. Yes, well, a lot of people that say it's the larger vessels that have disappeared there, they've turned out to be smaller shipping boats and they've turned out to be smaller fishing boats and things like that. So it turns out that it's not a real thing. In fact, at the end of the entry I saw, is the Devil's Sea real? And basically... while some disappearances in the area remain unexplained, because it's fairly big, that will happen, scientists have proposed a number of explanations that are more plausible. Portals to other worlds, not really. Alien abductions, probably not. And vanishing sea creatures, well, I don't know. They're probably more put it down to storms, rogue waves, all sorts of things. So basically... no good evidence for that one either, Richard. Although, sure, I mean, I've only spent minutes researching this, so I could be wrong.
The point is, Maynard, there's been many pop culture references, movies, television, to the Bermuda Triangle.
Ah, yes, but what about the Falkirk Triangle? That's the one...
What?
The Falkirk Triangle. That's the one between Glasgow, Edinburgh, Falkirk, where they have over 300 UFO sightings a year, Richard. That's more... You can go for weeks and there'll be one every day.
In Scotland?
Yes, Scotland. Yeah, you got the top of the bottom of the triangle, which is Falkirk, and Glasgow and Edinburgh, a line across the top.
Well, I'm part Scottish, so that is very meaningful. Yeah.
Well, look, and a lot of and they've tried to get it as a tourist map. They want to try and get it on the spot as a tourist UFO hotspot. They've approached a couple of prime ministers about it, who apparently didn't get back to them. Strangely enough, yes, they've approached David Cameron, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, John Major, all the unpopular ones. Probably Margaret Thatcher. They didn't have Margaret Thatcher's phone number, and Bonnybridge is a hotbed of UFO activity. There you go. So there you go. So that's one, that the Falkirk Triangle. I'm sure we've got listeners in Scotland to the Skeptic Zone that may know about this. Although looking at where it is, there'd be a lot of major airports not far from that triangle that would be going over. And a podcast UFO, which is one of the UFO podcasts I listen to, that even they are puzzled that if this was some sort of phenomenon from another dimension or aliens visiting from far away, that they would have lights in the first place on their craft, because why would you put lights on unless you wanted to be seen or something about your propulsion device emitted light? Why would you do that otherwise?
I've never considered that.
Yeah, why would you have lights on your craft unless you wanted to be seen, you were trying to fit in to look like aircraft that we have, or the propulsion system caused some sort of lighting?
They should have Star Trek cloaking technology.
Well, they could just have nothing, which would probably be even easier.
I'm dumbfounded.
Maybe it's for legal reasons.
Right, so if they were involved with a crash with a terrestrial object, it would be an insurance claim.
Yes.
Right,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there was even a Bass Strait Triangle claimed for a while there, true.
Where is Bass Strait for the listener?
Well, that is between the bottom of Australia and the top of Tasmania. If you were to draw a large map of Tassie and you were to draw a triangle, it's between where Melbourne is and the top of Tasmania, and includes that. Now, it's not very deep there. It's still on the continental shelf. It's only about 50 metres deep, roughly. No. 50 metres. Of course, Americans will have no idea how deep that is. It's 50 metres, okay?
That's about 20 miles, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's 20 miles in American talk there. But I was looking into that, and there's scant evidence for it because, again, it's quite well travelled. But the one interesting one that did disappear is that in 1972, a de Havilland tiger moth flown by Brenda Heen and Max Price disappeared on a flight from Tasmania to Canberra because they were the part of the protests about the flooding of Lake Pedder. Lake Pedder was one of the last, I think, the last lake to be flooded for a dam.
It had pink sand.
Nice. Did it? Lake Pedder?
Pink sand, yeah.
Okay.
My mother used to tell me about that, yeah.
Okay. And it actually crashed somewhere at sea between the East Coast and Flinders Island. Now, it was at the time alleged that the aircraft was sabotaged by pro-developers, but there's been no evidence of that, and there's a big a citation needed next to that in the Wikipedia entry to that. But that's one of the ones that disappeared. And, of course, Frederick Valentich,
yes,
1978, disappeared. And then the only entry for the Bass Strait Triangle after that was in a year later, in 1979. The yacht Charleston disappeared while sailing to Sydney from Hobart to join the Sydney-Hobart yacht race. But, of course, that time of the year is very, very big on storms. And that, in fact, I think that's why they have the race, so it's a bit more exciting because people got killed last year on it. So that's the Bass Strait Triangle, so that's not one to really worry about either. Look, on a very superficial, shallow dive into the whole thing, I really don't think it's worth the time. But I did enjoy, as a child, the Charles Berlitz book. And I heard you describing, it was from the Randy's Flim Flam book you read last week. Yes. In fact, he was the guy who tried to get the whole thing going with the Dragon's Triangle as well. He tried to put that there. And I think, I'm sure he would have had a go at the Bass Strait Triangle if he'd had a chance as well.
Undoubtedly.
So, look, that's my look. But again, Triangle, Season 6, Episode 3 of The X-Files, or Fred McMurray, or Eric Stoltz, or Luke Perry. They've all done movies about the Bermuda Triangle, and all worthy, I'm sure. Fred McMurray's probably the real winner, but those 1975 sound effects are going to be good. There's probably, you can see someone's finger pushing the boat across the little thing. It's probably at the sink. It's going to be great. Fred McMurray solves the Bermuda Triangle. Ha-ha. Try that, Agent Mulder.
G'day, this is Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, proud to be a skeptic, and you can find out more about me at drkarl.com and get lots of free stuff there as well.
Now it's time once again to go back to those archives. You know what? This time, it's not at Trove, but normally it's at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au. But sometimes we look further afield, other newspaper archives here and there, to see what was reported in the past about various mysteries or things to do with the paranormal, the supernatural, that sort of thing. Now, this week I thought I'd look back about 22 years to the year 2003 for the Coogee miracle. Now, Coogee is a very nice seaside suburb here in Sydney, very famous beach, very popular with tourists as well. And I happened to be there just on the weekend to take a little dip in the rock baths at the northern end of Coogee Beach. And while I was there with Skeptic Zone reporter Maynard and Secretary of Australian Skeptics Lara Benham, and indeed the President of Australian Skeptics Jessica Singer, we walked past the shrine. The shrine to the Virgin Mary. Why is there a shrine to Mary? Well, as we read on Wiki, in January 2003, it was noticed that one of the fence rails on Dolphin Point, just north of Coogee Beach, when viewed from a particular angle and distance, resembled a veiled woman. A local laundrette was the first to draw attention to it and set up a gallery of photographs to attract visiting pilgrims. When this example of pareidolia, a human tendency to perceive vague visual stimuli as human faces, was reported in newspapers, many Christians, predominantly Roman Catholic, came daily to worship what they interpreted as an apparition of Mary, the mother of Jesus, although the Roman Catholic Church never officially recognized this alleged apparition. No particular supernatural powers were attributed to the shadow, dubbed Our Lady of the Fence Post by the media, also known as Rail Mary, and interest waned within a few weeks. The section of fence that created the image was destroyed by vandals within a few days of it being publicized, although the local council had the fence replaced. While some continued to petition the Catholic Church and the New South Wales government to build a chapel, their claims were not seriously considered. Now, fortunately for us, at the time, people took photographs from the particular angle, at the particular distance, at the particular time of day, and I'll link to those in the show notes. But it was quite interesting in a way. It was a white fence with railings, which made a white angle. When the sun was at a certain angle, those fence railings and the fence posts created a shadow at a certain angle to the post. The shadow was dark, the fence was white, and again, it was sort of, it looked like a vague figure. Now, could be interpreted as a woman standing like the classic Mary pose you see in those paintings from the Middle Ages of the Virgin Mary. But at the time, it was quite a big deal with very religious people. And indeed, I don't know if it was thousands, but hundreds of people would flock to the beach to try and catch a glimpse at the certain time of day, because once the sun changed its angle, the image, the pareidolia, the illusion simply disappeared and it looked like a fence again. But let's take a look at some of the newspaper reporting of the time, and we turn to the pages of the Sydney Morning Herald, dated February 2003. I don't have an exact date because luckily for me, somebody took a photograph of this particular issue, which I can't access easily, and used it as the background of a YouTube video, so I was able to take a screen capture of that particular newspaper report. And indeed, it has the photograph of the fence post taken at the right time of day. And now I look at it very closely. It's clearly a fence post in shadows. But I will grant that the odd angles can be viewed upon at a glimpse to be vaguely human-looking. Anyway, this is from a section of the Sydney Morning Herald written at the time called Spike. Sacred site draws pilgrims. Catholics have been flocking to Coogee this week, and it hasn't been to cool off at Giles Baths. And Giles Baths are the wonderful rock pool baths at the northern end of Coogee Beach. Instead, the faithful, along with skeptics, photographers, residents and curious spectators alike, have converged on Beach Street to catch a glimpse of what is being described as an apparition of the Virgin Mary. Spike stumbled across the oddity after reading an article in Wednesday's Southern Courier, the local paper, in which Coogee resident Christine Cherry claims to see an apparition of the Virgin Mary outside her Beach Street laundrette and gallery every afternoon. Quote, Between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. on sunny days, an apparition appears through a shadow effect in the form of the Virgin Mary, end quote, Cherry told Spike yesterday. Quote, "It's an optical illusion, but what are the odds of it taking that form?" End quote. Cherry, who says she's a spiritual person but doesn't describe herself as religious, said the image was first spotted last December. At first, she put the image down to a cloth attached to the fence. Maintenance work was being carried out at the time, but when Cherry walked up to the headland, she found nothing there. As the angle of the light changes during the afternoon, the image fades in and out of view. On bright days, Cherry says, the image appears to resemble stone and can be seen outside her laundrette gallery, which extends to the other side of Beach Street. Quote, "A lot of religious people have come here. Catholic people have said this is a message," end quote, Cherry said. Another twist in this tale is that the headland on which the apparition appears has been renamed Dolphin's Point in honour of the eastern suburbs people who died in the October Bali bombings. However, on close inspection of the picture, we agree with Cherry that the apparition is actually an optical illusion, formed by a bright light reflecting off the fence, which doglegs around the headland. And again from the Sydney Morning Herald, this time dated the 3rd of February 2003. Virgin Mary hits Sydney Beach again. Even on the traditional Christmas Day of Rest, the Virgin Mary has made another appearance at Sydney's Coogee Beach, with several thousands gathered for the spectacle. Optical illusion or religious vision, between the hours of 3 and 4:45 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, the apparition has appeared on a fence post at the northmost tip of the beach. The religious, families, teenagers, and just plain curious mass on the cliff and below on the sand in anticipation. Some were amazed by what they saw, and others were disappointed. Quote, "I saw an apparition, but it wasn't Mary," end quote, Gary Quinn of Hocking, Wisconsin, in the US, said, referring to the beach's bikini-clad babes. Quote, "It's hot out there, so if she shows up, hopefully she'll be wearing sunscreen," end quote. Diana Cority of Maroubra, which is a nearby beach suburb, was emotional and teary-eyed as she pointed out the vision to friends. Quote, "I saw it last week, and this is my second time I have come to see her," end quote, Miss Cority said. Quote, "It feels so good that our dear Virgin Mary is with us. She's trying to get us as close to God, her Son, and our Lord Jesus Christ," end quote. Mrs. Curtis said that the apparition brought a message of peace as the world prepares for a war. But Tony Turry of Strathfield said it did not really matter what message she was trying to bring. Quote, "Different people see different things. They reckon she shows up in different coloured shawls, sometimes blue, other times maroon," end quote, he said. Quote, "But it doesn't matter because everybody gets a different message," end quote. Natalie Weisbeck of South Sydney agreed. Quote, "I think it is amazing that so many people are gathered in one spot to see her," end quote, she said. Now 2 years later, on the 5th of February 2005, once again in the Sydney Morning Herald. No rest for the quest for Coogee's Holy Rail. 2 years after the apparition of the Virgin Mary was first spied through the front door of a laundrette, pilgrims of the Coogee Madonna are lobbying to have a chapel built on the beachside reserve. Mary might have slipped from popular imaginings, but not even the Catholic Church's dispassion have quenched the fervour for her followers, who tend to a makeshift garden shrine by the white fence post from which she is said to appear. And that shrine is still there to this very day. Carmen Asavio of Bondi has lobbied Randwick Council, bent the ear of Premier Bob Carr, and written to the Catholic Archbishop of Sydney, George Pell, imploring them to help build a chapel. There is no convincing Mr. Savio originally from Italy, that the Coogee Madonna is a trick of the light or an optical illusion caused by the twist of a white fence post. Quote, "This is holy land," end quote, he says, wistful for the days when thousands came to gaze on Mary. No fewer than 3 academic papers have delved into the Mary apparition at Coogee, first reported in January 2003 at Dolphins Reserve at the northern end of Coogee Beach. At least 2 papers have found a link between the outpouring of grief over the Sari Club bombing in October 2002 and the growing national insecurities. But for those who venerate Mary, it is purely a matter of faith. Jenny Vaselsic from Western Sydney journeys 2 hours every Tuesday to the shrine, her original visit prompted by a vision in her bedroom. Quote, "I promised God and Mother Mary I would follow her," end quote, she says, clutching a well-thumbed prayer book containing holy pictures and pressed rose petals from which she sees the faces of Mary, Jesus, and the angels. She says she has seen a vision of a blue-veiled Mary while praying at Coogee. The so-called Coogee Madonna manifested into anecdotal stories of personal visitations and healing, helped along by a pilgrim's grapevine, such as the 9-year-old boy who told Mr. Savino he had seen the Virgin Mary beneath the arches and then under the rock ledge. Quote, "I saw him. He was shaking. I looked into his eyes and I knew he was not lying to me. 6 people tell me she has appeared in person. She is 30 or 35 years old, and she talks, but no one understands the language she speaks," end quote. The laundrette has become an informal meeting house for pilgrims, and it distributes Mary medals, of which more than 4,000 have been given away. The laundrette owner, who went public with the apparition, no longer wants to speak about the Madonna. Deluged, she says, by anonymous hate mail, so vicious and threatening it has been referred to police. And that was very unfortunate. There's always nutters out there on all sides of the spectrum. Dr. Carol Cusack, senior lecturer in religious studies at the University of Sydney, said it was no coincidence the apparition grew in popularity as the world prepared for the Iraq War. Quote, "Pilgrims to Coogee are joining in an age-old religious practice, older than Christianity, and it functions to alleviate stress experienced by the community," end quote. And also in the show notes, I will link to a site called the Museum of Lost Things, which has a page devoted to the Virgin Mary at Coogee Beach. And on that page, you can see a couple of good examples of the fence post taken at the right time of day to initiate the illusion. Mother Mary at Coogee Beach. Now, at the time, I remember hearing about it, and I was quite intrigued, and I was preparing to head over to see this for myself. But unfortunately, before I could do that, the vandals, who I don't know have ever been caught, of course, after all these years, had already destroyed the post, or that part of the post, or that part of the fence, which meant the illusion was lost. But, as I said, if you go to Coogee to this very day and you head to the northern end on your way to the baths, you can stop by and look at the remains, the shrine of the Holy Post. But you too can look at all sorts of things from the past when you go to online archives of newspapers, especially at TROVE, at trove.nla.gov.au. Put in your search, because when you do that, you never know what miracles you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast this week, and thank you to all those people who continue to support, or those new people who have joined us to support the Skeptic Zone via PayPal or Patreon with micropayments every month. And you can do that at skepticzone.tv, as well as see the show notes for every episode. Now I'd like to mention a website of a friend of mine, Karen Bickersma. There's a familiar name. I think Karen, she might even know the Skeptical Fairy. Who knows? Anyway, Karen is a writer, editor, author, and communications specialist from Melbourne, and she has a couple of books about the best ever baby name tips, and also a very serious book, of course, the book every woman needs to read. Women Speak Out About Gendered Domestic Violence. A serious topic, indeed a serious topic, and a link to Karen's site, which is karenbickersma.com.au, is in this week's show notes. Coming up on next week's show, I think we're looking at having a report from Adrian Hill, who's still in Canada before she disappears to the Bermuda Triangle. And I'm sort of eyeing up the topic of creationism, an oldie but a goodie, for the TROVE segment. But we'll all discover what's coming up next week when next week comes around. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
The pleasures of a Skeptic Zone barbecue, Maynard.
Oh, yeah, this is great. We've had potato, which the cats have tried to eat. We've had lamingtons, which the cats have tried to eat. Basically, I'm surprised the cats haven't tried to eat the table.
Me too. Lara.
Hello.
Hello. We're going to do the dice game for this week. Oh, look, there's Maud. She's hunting another lizard.
She's actually a cat on drugs at the moment.
No.
Oh, that's
Oh, did you see that? She nearly got one.
It was a fly.
It was a fly. It was Henrietta who responded to the catnip.
Yes, Henrietta has responded very well to the catnip. She was very excited for it.
It was quite something. All right, so we're going to play the dice game for this week.
D8.
A D8.
On the phone.
It's on the phone app. Okay, we have an 8-sided die, virtually. I predict for the first roll 8.
4.
And I'm using the page numbers that stories are on the Nexus magazine, which is Australians' alternative news magazine.
Ooh.
They have things like urine therapy and Giza landscape alignments. So I will go with the numbers on here. I'll go with 4, 8, 8 and 5.
We can't remember all that.
So the first one was a 4.
4.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll go with 4 then.
I can't see that.
It's a
2.
two.
It's a 2.
So none of us got that right.
Right, okay. Next, I'll go with 8.
7.
1. Lara got it 7.
Absolutely.
It's a 7. It's a 7. Oh dear. Okay, next one.
A 1.
A 1.
1. I was genuinely going to say 1 before you two said 1.
All right.
So. Oh my gosh!
It's 1.
Wow, the power of Nexus magazine. This stuff about urine therapy must be true.
That has never happened before.
That's interesting. Okay.
Does that mean we get the $100,000 prize?
We do.
Amazing.
Okay, next roll I predict a...
Stop while we're ahead.
We
Yes.
should.
Yeah.
7.
3.
3.
Oh, it's
3
a 6.
6.
It's a 6. I don't know what to say.
Well, what you say is, well, that's anticlimactic.